So, are we ready to start? Warmly welcome and great thanks for joining us today. We can say that we are basically opening the conference in a parallel room. So for us it's a very pleasant occasion. Today we are going to talk about green reconstruction of Ukrainian communities. My name is Anna Ackerman. I'm an analytic for International Institute of Sustainable Development and a member of ECODIA civic organization. This session is organized by International Agency Vision Zero of Sustainable Development with the support of Build Ukraine Back Better organization that right now combines more than 60 organizations from Europe working on green and sustainable rebuild of Ukraine. Last year already we held one session during Rebuild Ukraine, and we are very grateful to organizers to have the possibility of this session this year, not just with representatives of civic organizations. We are very grateful that we have great experts today with us who work on green sustainable reconstruction in their sectors. Among us, they are together. And today we are going to talk about different sectors where sustainable development sustainable rebuilding already takes place. The idea is to talk already about organized projects, because in year 2022 we only could imagine what green reconstruction can look like. We talked about priorities, and as for today, this will be our focus. We are going to talk about projects implemented, successful ones, and perhaps less successful cases, with main idea to upscale and make successful projects more systematic. We are very interested to have bigger number of projects. We will talk about what is needed for that, what communities need, what community organizations need, what state authorities need, what cooperation can be there, and so on. And so we start. And of course, I'm really glad to introduce our speakers today. We are going to follow a principle of sectors, from infrastructure through construction sector, energy sector, financial capacities of communities. That's how we are arranged in front of you. Here I'm glad to represent Mr. Viktor Zagreba, chair and project leader of Vision Zero civic organization. They deal with transport and infrastructure projects. Later, Yulia Shevchuk, head of a representative office in Ukraine and chief investment advisor in NEFCO in Ukraine, Nordic Environment Finance Corporation. Energy Efficiency Fund of Ukraine, Alina Sushik, partnership manager, Energy Act for Ukraine Foundation. They implement projects with renewable energy among Ukraine. Natalia Litwin, project coordinator, NGO Eco Club and Energy Transition Coalition. Our partners definitely know them. And Maria Lukyanova, a specialist of green investment, Bankwatch CEE. So we start. The structure of this session will be a short presentation of an organization, then main body of the discussion, and then I expect to have a space for your questions. And wrapping up, and then I believe some talks to our speakers. Please build networking with them. Don't be afraid to talk to them. So we will meet closer. And first question to all the speakers. Say briefly about your organization and what role you played all this time in projects of sustainable reconstruction, what you did, and more personal question, what inspires you most in your work and what saddens you most in your work. Okay, I can start. Our NGO Vision Zero works in sustainable mobility sector, public mobility and transport infrastructure. Our focus of our attention for last 2 years, we strongly focus on electrified public transport, trolleys, buses, to create conditions to sustain investments and development of these systems. Another focus is bridges, first of all, so state roads infrastructure. We have a partner for Energy Effective Cities of Ukraine Foundation, European Climate Foundation, and we work directly with more than 10 communities of different sizes in Ukraine. What saddens us most and what makes us happy the most, if we take this year, we have many events. All the time you can be sad because of something and you can be happy for some other events. For this year, I was disappointed about crisis of political leadership in renewable sector. That happened a day before Ukrainian recovery policy, a day in Berlin, when our minister Kobrakov of renewal was suddenly and unexpectedly for himself as well was dismissed, and so these changes on the positions, key positions in these sectors, were vacant for more than half a year. It was very disappointing for me, and I believe for many others. What makes us happen is all the side events that were around this conference in Berlin, and the event that we are today, ReBuild Ukraine. I'm really glad to be here again. I see the increase of the scale. I'm really glad to see representatives of city municipalities, heads of municipalities. I'm really glad that you are here. I understand it's an initiative of communities and businesses. It's very positive and it gives me energy and positive approach. That's my introduction. Thank you. Thank you very much, Victor, Miss Julia. Good morning, dear colleagues. I work in an organization that is called NEFCO. NEFCO is an international financial organization that was created by 5 states of Northern Europe. As a response to military actions, NEFCO introduced a program of green development. And for now, we have 50 parallel ongoing projects that are implemented during war. I think that's already an impressive fact. We did not stop our actions. We work in construction sectors, building constructions for internal dislocated people, critical infrastructure, water, heat. And I wanted to mention our achievements. One of the programs that is called Critical Infrastructure is financed by European Union. A year ago, grant agreements were signed with city communities, and now we have 45 tenders organized, 33 projects are implemented, and 6 projects are completed. So we are ready to work fast, considering situation in Ukraine. What inspires us is readiness of our local communities to introduce programs. What saddens us a bit is that, unfortunately, on national level, we didn't have simplification of procedures. There were no powerful reforms because project cycles remained as long as they were. For us, it's again a comparison that we need to work with local communities, that they are those who really can show fast results. Thank you. Thank you very much, Ms. Julia. Mr. Yehor, thank you. I welcome all the participants of this event. My name is Yehor Farenyuk. I represent Energy Efficiency Fund that works since 2019 for providing energy efficiency for living residential buildings. Right now we implement 3 strategically important programs related to energy saving and green reconstruction of housing. We have different directions of programs, but they are all combined under one slogan of today's event, which is green, sustainable rebuild, reconstruction. So we renew damaged buildings, and we have programs for providing alternative energy sectors in residential areas, and program that helps to introduce energy efficient solutions and save money on energy. What inspires us? We are inspired that people are so eager to introduce these energy efficient solutions. They restore their building, they install solar stations to provide for them this energy component, and the results are so fast. So the determination of people who do that right now, not expecting when someone helps them. What makes us a bit sad is some indifference of other people. There are many examples where local self-governments does a lot. Mr. Volodymyr asked me to say about Chortkiv city. When in communal social sphere it's made, but it's so difficult to implement programs in residential sector because there are those who are really eager and prepared to work, and there are antipodes, people indifferent who don't understand why they should do something now to invest in their buildings, who in fact this building in fact belong to them. It's their common property, and it has to be communicated not just in local level, not in a separate organizations level, but it has to be a central national communication directed to inform people that right now they should use the tools that are available. That's all from my side. Thank you. Thank you very much. That reminds me that indeed many problems that you mentioned, they existed before full-scale invasion, and now they are still there. They didn't go anywhere. We need to work on them. At first, we had an impression that they are somewhere on the background, but they are still there, and it's important to work on them. Ms. Alina? Yes, I welcome all the participants of this discussion. I represent a Foundation Energy Act for Ukraine. Our foundation was established in 2022 in March as a response to full-scale Russian invasion and energy crisis caused by this invasion. Our main activity of our organization is to safeguard critical infrastructure objects with sustainable solar solutions. Our foundation directly takes part in the rebuilding process, and we implement 2 active campaigns, one of which is 100 solar schools, and another is 50 solar hospitals. The goal of this campaign is to create 100 solar stations with energy storages on these objects. As for today, we built already 14 stations. And until the end of this year, we plan to finish 24 solar stations. Our projects, when we talk about average power, is from 20 to 60 kilowatts, and they help to work during blackouts from 3 to 6 hours of autonomous work. What inspires me is direct participation in this restoring process. Those are personal meetings with representatives of communities, with principals of school, staff of the hospital, with children, to see that they have this possibility to learn normally, to see patients that can stay in hospital, be patients, receive surgeries. What saddens us is that we receive so many requests, and we need some time to accumulate a support from donors to find resources for these projects. We want to help everyone immediately, but we need to wait and be patient. Thank you. Thank you so much, Ms. Natalia. I understand you also receive hundreds of requests from communities. Indeed, I represent Eco Club organization. We work for more than 5 years in environmental protection, and one of the most important subjects of our work is energy sector. Our mission is to create safe environment with influencing policy. It is what we did before full-scale war and what we continue to do now. We offer our media to media, we talk about green technologies, we work with state officials, and we take part in legislation activities. Also, we work on assessing the impact of energy to environment. We work on many other things, but we also cooperate with other NGOs. We support them and coordinate. After the beginning of full-scale war, we thought about how we can help, except for provide humanitarian aids. Step by step, we understood that one of the best solutions is to continue our work. And in 2022, we started a project, Solar Support to Ukraine. Within the frameworks of this program, we have a goal to make an impact to energy independence of Ukraine by introducing solar stations on critical infrastructure objects like hospitals and water supply stations. And this work with solar stations, we started before. It was in 2020 when we finished our first program of a solar station on Voznesensk water supply channel. And as far as we know, it's the first program in Ukraine where the station become a property of water channel. We are proud of that because after the beginning of the war, this period of active military actions, Voznesensk and Mykolaiv region completed the solar station since they understood what benefit comes from that.
We're also working with the technology of heat pumps, and long story short, we manage projects of construction of water facilities for communities. We search for proper places for such projects. We make budgets, feasibility studies, and then we hand over those objects to the property of the city. What inspires us? Our being united. What makes us sad in work? It's the difficulties in planning. For our organization, strategic planning has always been the key, which increased our efficiency. But now we realize that we have certain short-term operational tasks. We have strategic goals, but any planning depends on the situation of war, and this is really what makes us sad. Thank you so much. I think that this matter of planning is relevant to everyone, and everyone is nodding. So yeah, we all can relate to that. That's the reality we have. Thank you, Natalia. Maria. Thank you. So I represent the network of NGOs in Eastern and Central Europe, Bankwatch. The scope of my responsibility includes the green energy, and basically Bankwatch has the task of monitoring implementation of projects in such institutions as the European Investment Bank, other institutions on place, so that they don't violate the environmental condition and the human rights. Starting 2022, the Bankwatch launched the separate line of business dedicated to Ukraine, and now we're working on discovering financial resources for those Ukrainian communities that whose reconstruction is the priority. Also, we are partners with the Foundation of Enterprise Support and the Ukrainian Bottom-Up Organization. We increased the index of reconstruction of communities. Before the war, every year we had these tables of the capacities of communities. If you remember that, those tables showed how capable of raising funds, of attracting donors the communities are. Now we're piloting the renaissance of this project. And what inspires us? These are small, tiny communities that regardless any attacks, shelling, they work for the people, they welcome and host refugees and IDPs, they deliver services, so their life didn't stop. So that's what inspires us, especially when we're talking about the tiny communities which now try to meet the requirements and demands and show their resistance and stability. They develop complex plans of rebuilding and doing other things. That's why we want to help them. What makes us sad? Definitely low accessibility for financial institutions. Basically, only city communities are able to raise credit funds, and most Ukrainian communities didn't have this experience, and it's hard for them. Additionally, at the national level in this legislative field, we have a lot of gaps, a lot of things that extend the process of money raising and as a result starting the recovery. Thank you so much, Maria. And so we've talked about what made us sad, and basically that's what we're going to discuss now. So I was sure that you would speak about that. What inspires us? We're talking about the recovery in communities. We have representatives of amazing communities here. Thank you for coming here. Actually, we have to learn something from you, but thanks for coming here to listen to us. And now we're switching to the main discussion where we will discuss specific examples. So I asked each of our panelists to share some examples of the project of what they saw, which did not succeed. Some projects that were not implemented according to the sustainability principles, that were not done according to our wish to have the recovery and rebuilding. Of course, we will also talk about the success stories, about how those projects look now. And of course, since 2022, we have identified it for ourselves what the green recovery is. That's why it will be very interesting to listen to you, as each of you will share your own examples. And later on, we'll talk about how to scale up the success stories. So now I give the floor to Victor. Please, I'm really wondering about your examples. Thank you. So let us start with the far from the communities. I don't know about you, but to me, bridges are a very specific topic. I really love bridges. When I was in Denmark and Sweden, I saw those beautiful bridges. Mostly the bridges in Ukraine are not like that. They're traditionally built, made, and I want to show you the first illustrative example, the bridge that was built basically from scratch at the place of the totally ruined object in close to Chernihiv. So the goal of this bridge is to serve the needs of the Chernihiv community. So we have a lot of questions on this bridge. We will publish the analytical note on that later, but now I will just present some basic facts. So first of all, the bridge that was built was twice as wide and twice as bigger than it used to be, and even posts on Facebook were about with people asking, why do we have so many lines on that bridge? And the answer was that, well, we have to make the bridge that would anticipate 20,000 vehicles per day. But the fact is that neither before the war nor during the war, we never had 20,000 vehicles there. The capacity of the bridge was mostly like 4,000 or 5,000 vehicles. And so, of course, it resulted in extra expenses of concrete, of steel. Now we have those emissions which are unnecessary. We don't know, this project was implemented without any tender procedures, so we don't know whether it was any environmental assessment. We don't know the goal of this bridge in terms of the capacity. And so now this the transport feasibility of this bridge is whether it was necessary at that time on that place. Our answer is that it's really doubtful that it was needed. Another point is the cost. It must be the biggest and the most expensive project if we talk about the transport and the communities. The assessment before the project started was 5 billion hryvnias, and we don't know the final cost. So you can imagine how many solar stations we can build for that money, how many public facilities can be restored for that money, or even how many bridges can have overhaul repair for that money in Ukraine, because we have at least quarter of all the bridges in Ukraine in a critical condition. So we have bridges that are collapsing or are close to collapsing in different oblasts of Ukraine. So we take this example as the one that shows us what we shouldn't do when reconstructing. Another example is the bridge that is not existing yet. It's in the city of Voznesensk in Mykolaiv Oblast. There was a huge battle there at the beginning of the war, and so now the bridge was ruined. Now they have this temporary, kind of a temporary bridge where the vehicles cross, and the community needs this bridge now to unite the community and the big city. This is a local object, so it will not get money from the state budget. So now they are searching for any funds. They applied to some international programs, and they hope that they will get some financial support. And it's expected that it will like 50 times more cheaper than that bridge in Chernihiv. So here we have these examples of what is really needed in the bridge industry, and of course we need the overhaul repair of the bridges in Ukraine because many of them are in critical condition, and these are the preliminary results of the study that we have just started. Thank you, and I need to maybe check something with you. Maybe it's not obvious. You were mentioning the scales, that maybe we don't need a large bridge, but what is the matter of green reconstruction of bridges? What should it look like? It's like how we have this reduce, reuse, recycle, in regular life, and then we add something like refuse. So we don't have to use anything that we don't really need. And so the government should have this policy that is refusing of those populistic solutions. So the decisions taken should be rational and reasonable. If there is a way to build a bridge which is not with the lower capacity, then let's do that now. Later on, we'll make some bigger bridge which will be more efficient, which will take less concrete, steel, and less emissions. But maybe we can do that in like 5 or 10 years, while right now we need just a bridge to unite the community with the town. So maybe that's what we should do. And what about the standards? Do we have any standards at the national level? So can we name a standard that will help us build better? We're working on this. We're having this study now. We will have the results soon. But as we know, Ukraine had this goal of adopting European codes and standards, including the industry of bridges. And in Ukraine, we don't apply those European codes, although this journey started when we had the presidency of Yanukovych. So because then we just committed to switch into European codes in terms of construction and design. Unfortunately, we do not apply European codes in the bridges industry. That's why this market is closed. We don't have any like German, Austrian, or other players or Polish players who would be able to come to the Ukrainian market and build more ecologically friendly bridges. Right now, it's impossible in Ukraine. That's very interesting. Now we're gonna switch to the construction area. Of course, the situation there is different, because we have already European standards there. We have both Ukrainian standards. For some time, we have integrated a lot of European experience, but Julia, maybe I know that you have set some criteria for the sustainable reconstruction, so I'd be interested to listen to you, to your case studies, maybe, and something that was less successful in your experience, but it's important for us to learn from other mistakes.
Thank you, Anna. Indeed. I wanted to share a few cases, one of which is my favorite, because it's quite an example. It's most about financial questions, but it also refers to sustainability, I believe. I mean, program a houses for internally dislocated with a budget of 100 million euros, and this program is co-financed with the European Union. At the beginning of the program, we started with gathering information from the market, what companies are interested, what financial turnovers they have, so that we could develop tender documentation. And we collected this information from more or less 300 companies. If we were to apply before war criteria, only 5 companies could respond to these requirements. And this is an example of flexibility, because we decided to lower these criteria since there was a significant drop. But we applied compensational methods, so-called. What we did is we made more systematic change of these companies, monitoring of a program, of a project from NEFCO, from the consultant side. With smaller payment, there is smaller risk, so we decreased the payments. We removed bank warranties. As a response, there were some actions, of course. And that all led to a huge increase of work, but with that, a first object in Lviv will be ready for exploitation in the end of this year. So it took only 1 year to finalize. And that's an example of flexibility that can be applied during wartime. Not quite an unsuccessful example. I can mention what happens with such questions as asbestos. It's used in construction, and we already taught our market, our contractors, that it has to be properly utilized even before war. Right now, legislation changed, and we don't have even one licensed company to have a yard where asbestos can be somewhere stored. So those are only temporary storage places, somewhere near kindergartens or some other objects. We are looking for temporary solutions to agree with self-governments to cover this problem of storaging of the asbestos. So still there is a gap and a lot to do in that, and for me it's an example of quite unsuccessful operation. But I believe that with time it will all function properly. NEFCO was a first organization that started in 2021 program of green reconstruction of Ukraine. So you said immediately that you will be dealing with green reconstruction projects. How did you establish this green reconstruction for you? What are the main criteria for you, basing on projects that are here on this slide, maybe? If you can explain what this green reconstruction is for NEFCO. Yes, indeed, for us, we established quite ambitious requirement that every project needs to has a green component, so-called green component. It means that if we talk about buildings, that it will be highly energy efficient. So the tightness of insulation will be higher than Ukrainian norms require, plus application of solar panels, heat pumps, and other technologies. Later, in a chapter of cases that can be repeated, I will explain about the challenges that we are facing when we introduce green projects. You can mention them now. I think it's a good moment. Okay, then our idea and idea of donors from EU is to build a a better housing for Ukrainians. If we build students' dormitories, we transferred them to flats. But our controlling bodies in state, from what I see, don't really want to see progress in Ukraine, because we received a letter that we need to use typical solutions, typical materials in Ukraine. So no progress at this regard. And that's an example that we met with all our cities in the program, and they gave a justified answer that we want to use latest technologies, newest materials, not to use asbestos in the construction. So that student dormitories were built as flats, so contemporary housing was built with fulfilling all the inclusiveness and green technology requirements. As for now, this kind of communication with controlling body is successful. Thank you very much. So there is a demand among communities to this rebuild better, and they want it, yes. But there are many obstacles. Right, so later we will talk about that more. Jagor, maybe you will explain more about your projects, some problems and some successful projects that you implemented. This year you have a successful program, Green Deam. It would be really interesting to hear how it all works now. So, please. Yes, thank you. One slide is not enough. We have so many cases. A new DEAM program will, in few weeks, have 2 years, and we have more than 800 partially or fully finished projects, 420 complete buildings. You can see on the left side of the slide how the houses are restored with the principles of rebuild better than before. It can be done even better, but that's later. And another program that is related to green reconstruction, those can be not damaged buildings, but we don't have limitations here, but it's also restoring a life in these buildings. That's important, so that people wanted to stay in their buildings in Ukraine, and so that they had everything during blackouts. You can see that we have more than 15 fully implemented projects with this program Green Deam. As an example, Polytech Plaza in Kiev, for 50 days from the very beginning of general call and until the end to implementation and receiving a grant. It was 50 days. It was 820,000 hryvnia, Ukrainian hryvnia. A saving will be 80,000 hryvnia per year. We of course understand that price of energy will not be constant, but 70% was grant for equipment and materials, and in 5 years this project will pay off, and people receive illumination in places of work, of their general presence, and the internet providers are also supplied with energy. So our program is directed to finance general needs of energy for buildings. What we would like to achieve, because our program with Nova DIM is financed by donors, there are certain limitations of technical nature, and we would like to add to this program of restoration fully green component of energy efficiency. For that we need money, better negotiations from our side, co-financing on our side of course has to be provided, and then in fact it can be upscaled with sustainable green solutions that can combine these two slides into one slide. Mr. Jehor, one question to specify: how did you manage to accelerate all the procedures so you were able to implement the project so fast? As far as I remember, when this Energy Efficiency Foundation was started, maybe it lasted more than a year. Now it's months. So it's much faster. We have now better experience. A beginning was a certain false start. We wanted to start as soon as possible, and there were many bureaucratic procedures in the program that result from our legislation, like general fees. What we talked about with our colleague before this session, when the restoration is made by our authorities, this decision is made quite fast because people are not involved. And of course, when they are financed 100%, then authorities decide upon the participation in the program. Then you need to only pay for technical research or defect act composition, and that's it. But when we talk about projects like energy efficiency and partially grant 70%, then we have co-financing, and that requires general fees, collecting money. If we don't have people who are present, then they might help with working on documentation on the program. And this combination with the municipal programs give capacities, financial capacities and organizational capacities. That's what we considered while planning new programs. So municipal support programs that are, as far as I know, in many places, it's key, in few places, in Kiev and maybe some few. When it comes to Green Dome, it's Kiev, Lviv, Drohobych, Chortkiv. And I think in Mykolaiv, if I'm not wrong, Odessa is working on it. Next year we'll join that. I think it will be upscaled in cities, when in cities and in communities proper programs are accepted. So you see a huge interest in that. Yes, there is a big demand, but it depends on the solutions, availability of energy. As soon as there were blackouts, we receive exponential growth of calls. Okay, thank you very much. Now I would like to hear from about renewable energy again. I would like to hear from Alina, if you can tell us, Energy Act for Ukraine Foundation, your experience of successful projects and perhaps some other projects. Now, I think we'll see this slide. Since it's not here, I might start from a successful case. On this picture, you can see a high school in Hostomel, a city that became a symbol of Ukrainian symbol that Ukrainian nation is unbreakable. During the occupation, Hostomel was ruined in a big extent. So in this building, a roof was damaged. Occupant army stayed there for more than a month, so it was all robbed. And with the effort of parents and local communities, this high school was restored. And right now, 1,800 children attends this high school. Our foundation also participated in rebuilding, in installation of hybrid solar station on the roof of this high school. Since education takes place in offline mode, installation of this solar station also solves a problem of energy blackouts, and due to that, children can keep learning even during blackouts. So the station is built up from 54 photo modules, 24.3 kilowatts hybrid inverter of 50 kilowatts power, and 42 kilowatts per hour block. This example is not only for energy efficiency, but also restoration of the community. It shows that such projects create new opportunities for communities, for children, for staff of educational centers. And the initiative was possible due to support of our international donors, JZ and Octopus Energy. When it comes to negative examples, it's maybe not so much negative, but maybe lesson learned that we would like to share. That's about a project that was implemented by the fund at the beginning of our activity. Since in 2022, the need was significant, and we tried to, as fast as possible, to cover all the requests. There were a lot of equipment that donors from abroad provided. So in order to secure one of the schools in solar panels. We combined all the equipment. The decision wasn't so much productive since the equipment didn't match so much. Batteries were not lithium ones. They were quite complicated in operation. This station was complicated with lead batteries, and as for now, this station is not fully operational because lead batteries were fully discharged. So the lessons that we learned from this operation is that communities still need a qualified staff, specialists, energy management that will have broader competence, deeper competence, and that when something breaks, all the communities come to us, like to NGO that helped us, and we are not a service maintenance organization, so that communities need to have contracts for post-servicing, post-maintenance, so that specialists are involved who can professionally deal with that. That's all from me.
It was very interesting. Indeed, energy managers play an important role. We heard that since 2022, the communities encountered the lack of resources, so they had to lose their energy managers because they had to take care of other tasks. And now you're saying that energy managers are indeed needed. So how do you arrange this process just from A to Z? What do you leave the community with? Do you train the community on this? For example, talking about this building and its post-maintenance. After we leave the solar, ready-made solar station, the project and budget, design and budget documents. We also have a short one-day training for employees of the school, hospital, or the object, involving some representatives of the community, their electricity, maybe specialists if they don't have the energy manager, and we tell them about how the station should operate. We also have established the post-monitoring of the station, and we have access to the system online. When something is not working, we can see it, but often there are problems with the Wi-Fi connection when something, for example, is changed in the school or hospital, and then we lose this access to the monitoring, and then we have to call them and ask them what's wrong. So you keep monitoring the objects, how they operate through this online monitoring function. Yes, we also take those indicators. We need to know how many CO2 emissions we have avoided, how much money we have saved, to know whether our goal has been achieved. Thank you so much, Natalia. Now the question to you, the same one about the success stories, success cases, because you have them, and maybe there was some cases less successful. I can tell you that our NGO has built 31 power electricity stations, and will finish at least 10 stations by the end of the year. So these are the solar stations at two objects that you can see on the slide. They are installed at hospitals, because hospitals are what has to work to operate on a 24/7 basis. And so here's the solar station in one of the water supply facility. You have the basic numbers here on the slide, so I will not name them, but I can add a few things about this example that I'd like to draw your attention to. The solar station on the water facility, so the public utility water canal, water channel will receive property rights to the station. They will have less money, they will have to pay less for some external energy resources. They will be able to ensure the supply of clean water, which is beneficial for the city. The expenses on the energy resources, the gas and electricity, are reduced, which is good for the economy. For example, last year, the city of Rivne paid 1 million hryvnias just for gas, which is equal to the capital investments of the communities. And basically, this is part of the decentralization that we all want to continue. What's not obvious but is confirmed by the examples of Sumy, Voznesensk, as soon as the community receives the property rights of this production generation capacities and they use it in their economy, this technology gets more popular in this community and in neighboring communities, and the employees of this public enterprise start searching for other similar projects at other places. In the world, all developed countries try to implement the Paris Agreement because we all understand that it will stop the climate catastrophe. So one of the requirements of the Paris Agreement is the fair energy transfer, which indicates that the benefits from the energy generation should not only come to large stations, but also to regular people. And so the example of such solar stations at hospitals, schools, are a great example of usage of that just and fair transfer. I think that if we're talking about the hospitals, we can see here the benefits, the savings, and in this case, we have the assured energy safety and independence, because those facilities, those hospitals, they can deliver medical aid to people regardless of any blackouts. I hope that I've managed to show you how successful those cases were. I don't have any examples of failures, but I think that later on I can use maybe another context to tell you about it. Okay, yeah, maybe we will let us talk about it during the next round when we'll talk about how we learn our lessons. So greetings all once again. As I already mentioned during the introduction round, the BankWatch now is advocating access to funds for restoration recovery for the communities in development banks, and we push them to change in their policies, making them more accessible and making them more efficient, economically efficient, and to prove that we're not only talking but also acting. This summer we had site visits to some communities of Ukraine, and I'd like to share some case studies that we had that can prove that our advocacy works is efficient. So now we have the example of Zhytomyr, which is the Oblast center, which has experience of raising big amounts of money. They are applicants of different grants from development banks. And here you have one of the projects on the slide, the project of district heating in Zhytomyr. Its cost was 17 million euros, of which 7 millions was from the EBRD and the rest was from the local city budget, which included the reconstruction of boiling houses and reconstruction of systems. So we can see that the European money was used even for the better landscape, which makes this object look more attractive for the residents, locals, additionally to the better heating that they have. This project is targeted at reduced CO2 emissions, and it includes using the wooden pellets for heating, and now it looks really promising. But if we look at it in terms of sustainability for a longer period of years, the wide introduction of such projects can bear certain risks because the additional needs for that energy resources, that those pellets, they will need the additional usage of lands, which can pose a threat for some farming lands when we will have the competition for the farming for the land. But this is the long-term perspective, so we're gonna face it in several years. Another project is the building of the secondary school in Bucha. This project started before the full-scale invasion. Bucha was faced the huge increase of of residents due to the IDPs from Donetsk and Lugansk Oblast, and so it increased the workload for schools, and so the school had to increase the number of places for kids. Within this project, now we have the stage of additional building extension of some premises, and this, judging by experience of communities, I can say that bank projects need that the communities, when applying for the funding, have a guarantor from the ministry. This is a quite time-consuming and long process. While you find the guarantor from the ministry, it will take time, so this delays the receipt of money. Also, another point is very complicated bidding procedures. The contractor should have the experience of the projects that they apply for. The contractors now lack drastically the employees because of the military actions. And on the other hand, sometimes the tenders are in dead end when the contractor goes to the anti-monopoly committee complaining about the conditions which are restrictory. But these are not the communities that set those requirements. These are the criteria required by the development banks. And so here the anti-monopoly committee, the EBRD or other development banks, and the customers and contractors should agree upon the requirements, because unfortunately this causes the fact that the communities cannot use the money in time. Thank you but I want to clarify something. So you were talking about those bidding procedures. Now, generally speaking, what is the status of those sustainability conditions of the development banks? Maybe which of them are more ambitious? Which are the criteria that they use? And are they about the sustainability or just the quick reconstruction? Thank you for the question. The EBRD and EIB have those criteria of sustainability, of reduction of emissions, reduction of energy costs, and other things. They have it set, but the problem is different. Their procedures, their criteria are good, but when the money doesn't go to the community as the contractor directly, but when it goes through the Ministry of Regions, or, for example, when the European Bank works through the Ukrainian Commercial Bank, the liability for meeting those criteria is basically blurred. And these European banks, they use those criteria, but they are not always met on site. And so here is where the NGOs and monitoring organizations have their role when they are present in the territories, for example, that suffer from the violation of some criteria. So they have to approach the European banks, and that one later decides whether they should continue the project.
Thank you. Indeed, because we can see a lot of reconstruction, and we need that so that we can continue functioning. But here there is a nuance. We talked about this since 2022, how to rebuild sustainably in a long-term perspective, or to do a quick solution so that people have capacity where to go back, go to schools and so on. So there is a balance required. But going to the discussion about systematization of these projects, indeed, the projects we talked about green projects, green rebuilding, we heard about numbers, how many programs were implemented, 14, 33, soon there will be 50. But then the need is in thousands, only in residential housings. It's hundreds of thousands, and damaged, a lot of damaged ones, and so on. So the needs are significant. We heard that communities would be eager to have that. Now let's think how to make successful projects a systematic ones. Victor, bridges, as I understand, we don't have these projects that can be called successful, but nevertheless, how to make their scale bigger. We talked about European standard. Maybe there are other criteria that can provide successfulness. Yes, another point that is related to state level, but also local level. When it comes about transport infrastructure, especially before designing, there has to be planning, transport planning. There are different tools, including computer modeling, so that officials could make informed decision, because on the paper we have economical justification as a tool. They do that when all decisions are made, when the place is known, when contractors are known. That's sad, because many mistaking decisions are because of a lack of this planning phase. In our case, we have a big problem with bridges. We have bridges that still are under construction in Kiev, that were started, their construction started during Kuchma president, if someone remembers. There is a small bridge over a small river that construction cannot end 5 years already, and we need a lot of bridges. That's why planning before designing should be a norm, and another European standards and European codes in Ukraine. I believe that in this sector of bridges and roads, those are two things that we compulsorily have to introduce to state policies, so that we can have successful examples and with lowest impact on environment. Thank you, Ms. Julia. To you, what can we do so increase the number of such projects? Yes, that's an interesting question. So I want to say that when it comes to buildings, there are several levels of greeniness of the projects. Right now, we accepted ambitious goal of most green building in Ukraine, neo zero, with consumption close to zero. We expect to involve a grant from Finland. It's about school that was destroyed, and that's how it will be rebuilt. And right now we received an information from state expertise that we will never be able to introduce it to exploitation because, as you might know, school buildings are regulated. There has to be a special sport room, bigger principal's room, canteen. So to achieve level of consumptions close to zero with these sizes of rooms is very difficult. So we invited specialists who advise us to have a multi-purpose premises, or like in conference rooms in hotels that can be rearranged quickly. But we understood that if we don't receive pilot status from Ministry of Infrastructure, it would be really difficult to give it to exploitation. Now we are working on this pilot status, but it will take some time. So it would be good to see that in Ukraine people were more ready for risks, also state organs, for green technologies, not that someone accepts this risk, creates precedents, and only after that it starts to work. It would be good to have more systematic approach in reforms. Pilotage programs, this is very important. And today we are going to talk about circular economy, which is very important. And next stage, after near zero, there will be zero emission buildings, which should contain materials that are recycled, used in construction. So I can't imagine how we can implement that without showing that it is possible in Ukraine. Perhaps after near zero energy building, what's still missing, except for big sport rooms, maybe compactness, or maybe some other elements that you face? Are there professionals that can build these buildings in Ukraine? Is there technical expertise already? That's a big question, because we don't even have designers who would be able to design it without the support of international experts. And they are not so willing to accept responsibility for Ukrainian designers, because this is a quite peculiar sector. You need to go through expertise. But we work on that. We have nice partners now in Ukraine, partners, organizations, and we expect to overcome this. We really expect to see finished pilotage programs. Mr. Igor, how in the residential sector we can upscale programs of green reconstruction? Thank you for the question. It's still to be solved. And what are our conclusions for now? Let's count what we need to upscale green projects when we talk about energy efficiency as one of elements of green reconstruction. In average price of square meter for energy efficiency for modernization of heating systems and similar programs like modernization of the roof insulation is 100 euro per square meter. In average, many flat building is 5,000-6,000 square meters. And until war, we have 180,000 many flat buildings. It's obvious that many of them are still on occupied territories like Donetsk, Luhansk regions, Zaporizhzhia, Crimea. Let's say 160. At least 150 requires energy efficiency actions for modernization, also with the usage of green element. 75 billion euros, that's like for start. And if we add a green element, it's not 100, it's 150 euros per meter. And if it's near zero emission, then we can skyrocket this amount. So the only way is to co-finance. How that would work in all other countries? First of all, I said that demand for Green Deal program, it increases when there is indeed an example that right now we will not have electricity. People understand that, then they go vote. They say they want to take a mortgage, they want to, or a loan, they want to have energy safety. They won't have this program in community during 50, maybe 60 days. And the same happens, and we right now have smaller fees when we have big percents in banks. That's simply impossible. That's why we need to reconsider pricing policy for the energy after work, of course. There has to be a system of giving to owners of the building a long, cheap loans, 5 5%. In Poland, by the way, it's maximum 7%, usually 3 or 4%. That's a regular credit rate for a loan. So if we compare these elements, this triangle would have grant on the basis from Energy Efficiency Fund or from some other organizations, it doesn't matter. Another element is support of communities, support from local self-government organs in initiation of these programs. It's a help in designing, in auditing, it's in financing, co-financing. And another component of this triangle, the last one, is a long-term cheap loans from financial institutions or banks. And we also need to understand that market and business as well have to be interested in that. Without attracting business, without involving manufacturers of right materials, foreign manufacturers that can also donate their materials that are used in thermal insulation, for example, as a green component in modernization of buildings. Also to support in development of our procedures, our norms, and to help as much as possible in financial aspect, because right now our economy is in a condition that cannot provide upscaling. And business that should be interested in all these models and also work fast and upscale fast. It's not 10,000 buildings a year right away, but it's the right planning so that people can understand that market is working. So today we finished 1,500, next year 2,000, and then we can increase that to the level of 3, 4, 5% annually from general amount of residential buildings. Very serious preconditions, a lot of work. You also mentioned, I was surprised after first grants you said about policy of incentives for communal services fees. Another question about systematization of projects, so to increase their number. Together with Natalia, maybe you can explain more. You as a NGO, you support communities from the beginning till the end. What should be the approach? NGOs should do that, or should that be changed? If so, what should be, how should it work so we have more programs like that? Maybe NGOs should play a different role here. Yes, from our side, I will highlight that when communities make their homework, and if they plan in detail and prepare energy plan for the municipality, they prepared budget documentation, project documentation. It only makes the fulfillment, the implementation of the project faster. And of course, if we see that nothing is prepared and community done their homework, then we usually will take their projects of the community that has all that. We faced that often there was missing a documentation when it comes to expertise of a roof, connection schemes, layouts, topographic pictures and documents. These all documents have to be present so that we don't need to look for them in archives and or start to receive these documents. Also, our colleagues mentioned that main of a key elements is mechanism of attraction and co-financing of community. It also helps to increase the capacity, because if we build our stations, we are always asked for more. It has not enough power. We need to build more. So if we have a synergy and cooperation, a program can have bigger power and can cover bigger needs. And as I've said, it's preparation of specialists and increasing the staff potential. What we've seen during implementation of projects, that contractors did not have enough working teams, And we can understand that because of the war, there are limitations, people cannot freely travel, and that there's just not enough employees. So this problem also has to be solved somehow on a state level, and we should look for different paths to solve it. Thank you very much. Maybe another question about financing of such projects. How financing should be more systematic so that we have more of that. Well, communes should include that in their budgets, not maybe co-financing of buildings, but at least support in financing development of project documentations. Then it is cheaper, and it also shows their participations and their involvement. Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Natalia. Thank you. When it comes to the first question, I wanted to say about criteria that influence a successful or not successful project when it comes to sustainability. Here I wanted to answer, starting with example of RTU, one of our programs that we implement together with other NGOs and consortia, associations. Some of the representatives are here in this panel discussion. Eco Club as a supporter of us. There was a big competition, and we received many calls from whole Ukraine to create a solar power station or heat pump. So there is a big need for that. But what I would like to get our attention on is we have competitions all the time, and first of all, these competitions are, in fact, first stage is a interest from the community. Another stage is more detailed one. We might ask for some pictures, some calculations, some documents. We ask them to facilitate this work. And on this stage, some communes resign. We can't cooperate with them because they don't provide us this data. Also, first and second stage distinguishes communes. First element is presence of political will during years and presence of staff that is capable of implement this political will. As what we understand as political will is a will to create a department for the municipality, to understand that program documentation need to be prepared and other documents. I will be honest, we avoid cooperation with communities that doesn't have a political will, where we don't see this political will, because in fact it's a wasting resources, also wasting time. And here, going back to the answer that I didn't provide before in a previous question, we, together with colleague, advised and we decided that negative case is to work with a community that doesn't have a political will and specific goals and who are not ready for transparent, open cooperation.
If we speak directly, those two communities can be divided into two groups. First are those who which applied because there is the possibility to get money, and another one are those who want to do something and they search for opportunity, realizing their responsibility in and their steps within their work. And basically we work with those communities, with increasing the number of communities that search for partnership and search for money and have the opportunities. We think that this is a very important step forward towards this sustainability. Thank you. And my question is about this. The key to this sustainability is that the communities just implement the whole process from scratch. Is this how it should be? Well, this is how we try to implement our projects within our organization, so that further on those projects will be implemented on their own by the communities. But we have, we have the employees, the qualified managers, project managers. So it all requires a comprehensive approach, and we can provide that. but it's not like our resources can be used for anyone because it's not enough resources. So we need to work with people on site, and maybe that would require establishing some training programs, especially now when we have such a huge lack of qualified people, employees, including energy managers, because many energy managers used to be women, and now due to the situation they were forced to go to other countries in search for safer place. So that is what we should do at the national level, thinking of those training programs. Thank you so much. And Maria, speaking about the systemic solutions, what can you say? I think it's a very interesting question, and it might be quite rhetorical because there are no answers to that. But judging from our experience of dealing with partnerships with banks, with communities, raising those funds for reconstruction and the systemic nature of reconstruction depends on the legislative framework of the country. Because when banks might change their procedures, the communities will adapt their organizational capacities. They will update their documents. They will make project design and budget documents on their own. So they will know what to expect, what changes will affect them. And so that during this period of making this, developing the national budget, the communities will not be stressing out because of not knowing whether they will receive some money from the budget. And basically their own capacities of project implementation depends on that money. Another solution in work with the banks, and actually it is already regulated legally, is when the banks used to fund large projects involving so-called project or package projects that involved many parties. So we call it also a cluster approach. For example, when we have the energy cluster, like in Khmelnytsky region, and we can extend this project. And on the other hand, it requires ongoing, constant training for the communities, knowing what the European partners expect from us, what banks expect from us, so that the communities are equal partners. And now let me come back to the national level, because now in Ukraine we have the implementation of the public investment management reform, and it involves some risks of communities losing their subjectivity. Because in 2023, the roadmap for public investment management made communities an equal partner, along with the finance ministry, communities development ministry, accounting chamber, and other entities, but the action plan for the implementation of this reform only involves a few events or actions that relate to the communities. So now when we hear that there are like 100 projects ready for being funded by donors, we can say that there is no single project among that 100 that would be initiated by the community. So now we have those investment applications given by the communities only through the regional centers, and we should avoid that, because those communities should watch and learn how successful communities do that. And there is a huge demand for legislative framework, better legislative framework for this cooperation with banks. Okay, so this is exactly what you mentioned before. Thank you for that. And I suggest that these are the closing remarks, because we wanted to sum it up speaking about the sustainability, about success stories. We've mentioned a lot of European standards, about pilot projects, about the need for planning, about the work that communities should do for having such projects. We were mentioning that there there is the demand for that and it should be met. It was also very interesting to hear about how this mechanism of co-funding should work ideally. Of course, all communities, we all are dreaming about those long money, low rates. But we will see what's gonna happen. And now I would like to spend those last 8 minutes on communication with the audience. So maybe if that's possible, if you have any questions, maybe just a couple of them. If you have, please ask us. Are there any questions in the audience? Yes, I can see there is one. Please introduce yourself, the organization you represent. I'm Volodymyr from the European Analytical Center of Building Performance in City of Europe. Thanks a lot for this panel. There's been a lot of ideas presented, and it's quite beneficial to the whole discussion. My question is as follows. I really liked all the mentions of the capacity of communities. Well, let's imagine that you meet President Zelensky or maybe President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, tomorrow, for example. What would you ask them for in terms of improvement of the community's capacity? There can be just only one request or ask. Would it be some educational platforms or some other needs? So that was one question, and I would also like to hear what Mr. Ferenyuk would say about that. Thank you. Are there more questions? There is the good occasion. So there is the question over there. And yeah, so maybe let's collect the questions and then each one will have some time to answer. Good afternoon, I'm Olga. I'm Deputy Mayor of Ukrainka City. Thank you for such great speeches. My industry is capital construction, restoration of economy. So everything you've been saying, really, we can relate to that. It's really close to our reality. The community that I represent is not very capable of implementing all the projects on our own. And our problem is that we apply for grants, we search for donor funds, we approach the European Investment Bank, etc. But for 2 years of such actions, we haven't received any money. We have a positive history of implementation of our own projects. We have good feasibility studies. We have the person in charge of grants who speaks English freely, but we don't understand what the reason is. In some interpersonal, communication, we understand that the first money, the priority for money is the rebuilding now, reconstruction, and it's clear. But what should we do? This towns, the cities that have not been damaged or destroyed to a great extent, but we need to have the projects of building shelters, of energy efficiency, of other things that are really necessary for us. And this is a huge challenge for all small towns in Ukraine. Thank you for this question. I think that we can give an opportunity to each of the panelists to answer this question. I can only comment the first question on the community's capacity. I think that all this subject matter is overrated. We have a lot of capable communities, just like mentioned by my colleague. We just have to remove the barriers, the regulatory, the legislative barriers. Now our parliament takes more money to the national budget from the local budgets. So such things should be fixed. Speaking about the international programs, I think that all those projects and programs that we're increasing now in Ukraine, I think it only worsens the situation, because we have people with good education, with good qualifications, with good English. They apply to such vacancies. So basically, those people who used to work in some local governance authorities. So basically, those projects, they steal qualified people from local communities, and they all move to Kiev and work at the higher level. And now very often those small communities for the training. So for example, now those towns, they are under stress. They have a lot of critical questions they need or issues they need to handle. And now when somebody tells them to come for the training to another city, it's quite impossible for them. Thank you for the question from Ukrainka city. I think that you probably answered your question in your question, because now we have a lot of applications from cities, even NAFCOMET has a lot of such applications, and for us the priority is for destroyed, damaged communities. So there will be your turn. I know that you applied to us, but since you have this heating plant close to you, you had a lower tariff, and maybe that's the reason why you didn't get the immediate answer. I suggest that you talk to representatives of Chortkiv and Trostianets. They're an amazing example, a very successful example of successful communities, and maybe they can give you some advice on what you can do with that. Thank you. As for the question on what I would ask Ursula von der Leyen or the Ukrainian president, I think that as for the European Commission, I would just thank them for the support, because all those projects are implemented at cost of the European Union. This is our primary donor, so there's big thank you to them for all the support. And as for communication with our commander-in-chief, I would wish him to win. And the second, I would ask him to communicate with the people, even in terms of the energy efficiency, for example, because without the funding, it's very hard to do that without co-funding. That's why it's really there's a huge demand and need for transparent communication with what's going on with us on what's going on in the sector, without understanding of each co-owner of what they have to do. For example, like they have in Poland, which was established in 1970s, although they were dependent on the Soviet Union, but they have this institutional memory. And so they took care of their own housing, even multi-flat buildings, and so this is what they absorbed, and they had thousands of such solutions per year. And so I would just suggest the communication with the people.
Thank you very much. And last minute, that's for organizers, and we finish. Okay, then I will try to be really brief in answering the first question about Zelensky and Ursula. From my side, I would ask to integrate long-term strategies, the preparation of policies, and simplification of legislative procedures. Because what we see at the beginning of war, everything was simplified, logistics and construction norms, and now it all gradually return. So I wanted to consider conditions of a wartime, and on the other side, on the community, I would recommend collaboration mechanism and participate in associative models. Find stronger partner or become partner with other community, energy sector, and then together go to donors and ask for support. Thank you. I will also answer the first question. What we would say to President, a short message. Allocate the funds on places and money on places. Here our colleague said about financing, and I wanted to complement it a bit. Most of international financial organizations provide funds that are then distributed by central or regional authorities, but we as an organization believe this should change because this approach creates many problems. For example, it takes a lot of time to make a decision. Regional offices allocate funds on projects that will not be implemented, and that's also wrong. There is no proper mechanism and capacity to manage these amounts, which can lead to not well thought, not unqualified decisions, and all that is against principles of decentralization. We have an idea of creating financial mechanisms where local authorities could receive access to financing and receive funds directly and use these funds in a transparent way through procedures. In fact, central authority has information about general needs, but it's difficult to allocate sources for specific point needs of communities. So this kind of access for financing will allow both sides communication between donors and communities to justify allocating costs on this or other projects, and providing some promises that communities will later fulfill. Okay, answering first question, in communication with Ursula von der Leyen and President Zelensky, I would offer to sit on the same table, and so that Zelensky would learn from European partners how to allocate costs following the cohesion funds principles, the application of monitoring committees in partnerships where people from community have access to decision-making about dividing funds. Then when communities are involved, then it will be more transparent and no one will consider why money were allocated to one community and not to another. I also would really like to ask to revise our budget expenses, find money for development, and start to take projects from commercial banks that are partners of EBRD for energy efficiency and for reconstruction, and try to start there. If you have a good credit score already, you can easily go to more bigger scale projects. When it comes to consortia associations, it's a good idea because banks are waiting for such big partners for big projects. Thank you very much. Thank you for your questions. Thank you for your answer and your presence. Thanks to all speakers, and great thanks for what you do. As someone said, we all do that for our communities, for our people, for their better future, not just future, but their contemporary situation, so that children can go to school, have heating, so that we could live in buildings where elevator works, at least that for our survival. Thank you everyone for this panel. I'm grateful to the organizers. A big thing that I would like to ask you to return back the interpretation devices, also thanks to interpreters, and glory to Ukraine.